I wanted him to be on the ground so bad. I'm like, just get that man down. Get that man
Yeah.
down to the ground. It also felt
Yeah.
very like woman power ish. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Her and
Yeah.
Ginger being like, man up, Dean. Dean, you better
Yeah,
man up.
seriously. With climbing being like such a hyper, I feel like, especially at that time, a hyper masculine sport, like, I wonder, how he felt coming down and having to admit that, like, yeah, they let most of the pitches. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Melanie.
And I'm Tiffany.
Cool. And yeah, today we're continuing to dive into Climbing Free by Lynn Hill. We
Whoop, whoop.
read chapters 4 through 6 over the past 2 weeks, and so we're super excited to dive in. I guess before we do that, Tiffany, how are you doing today?
Uh, okay, not great, but I'm here.
I hear that.
I'm excited. I feel like it's been a long, long time
Yeah.
being here, reconnecting, but I'm feeling good. I'm actually like weirdly starting to feel like myself again. Last week I climbed 3 times
Nice.
in a week, and I
Nice.
have not. I can't say
Goals.
I. I do not know the last time I've done that. One of them was social. So that felt great. It was
Mhm.
like to actually climb with people for fun was
Nice.
random and nice to climb, especially with another black woman, which is also rare.
Ooh,
So it was great. It was great.
cool.
And then I hopped on the kilter board. I had a
Oh,
session.
you strong?
Yeah. I think I forgot. I forgot you need to be a little strong. I thought the kilter was chill, but
Yeah,
it's not
no, it's
chill.
not. Even
I
the
was
like
like
chill
compared.
ones are hard.
I know. I realized that because it is, in my opinion, the most chill of the
Mhm.
boards. But I was like, oh, this is
Compared to
like
like a
work.
tension or like a
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
In my opinion, that's just
Because
me.
what tension uses wood or
They use wood, but they have a new board that's now kind of like a mix of wood
okay.
and the poly resiny holds or
Hmm.
whatever that everybody's starting to do now. So I think it's easier now, at least the tension two. But I haven't touched the tension two, to be
Huh.
honest. I don't even think my gym has one.
Huh.
But the first time I did the kilter, I loved it compared to all the others. When I
Hmm.
tried the other ones, I was like, oh no, no,
Oh
these are
no.
hard.
Oh no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Not like
But
this.
otherwise, I'm hanging in there. You know, life
Cool.
is still lifing, but I'm here and like all I feel there's just like this meditative state that reading has put me in that I'm really enjoying. So,
Nice. Cool. Um,
how about you? How's that desert sun?
it's good. It is sunning. It's quite bright. I feel like that actual feeling of spring in New Mexico is like super short. Like it's like cold, 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 a little bit warmer, but still kind of cold. One day of like perfect weather and then it's hot. So
Yeah.
we're entering the hot phase. But yeah, I think I'm doing all right. I climbed twice this week, so I felt pretty good about that.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, all auto belays, but I feel like I'm getting stronger again, and I feel like I'm starting to get a little bit of stoke and a little bit of excitement back. I'm hoping to plan a trip to Red Rock soon. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll keep you posted on that. But it'll be like basically my first time climbing in Red Rocks. Like I climbed once there and did like a little bit of bouldering.
It's
But
heaven. It's absolutely heaven. I'll be
yeah,
there in September and I am
cool,
literally counting down the months. I
nice. Are you
cannot
planning to
wait.
boulder there?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. I would never. I
I
don't
would
even care
never.
if it's July. I
Yeah,
cannot touch the soil of Nevada and
yeah.
not like I will be at craft. I might experiment and go somewhere else. I've
Hmm.
always typically gravitated to that area, but there's no
Okay.
way. It
Yeah.
is absolute heaven on earth for me.
Nice. Yeah, so I am supposed to be doing some trad climbing when I go. So
Oof. Okay,
yeah.
let's
So
go. Let's go.
because my climbing partner does not boulder. he don't
Oh,
pull
that's
there.
rough.
So
That's rough.
yeah.
Blasphemy.
I know, it sucks, but it's cool. We're gonna get on some ropes and that should be fun. I'm starting to feel excited about trad. I did some trad last weekend, like on route, and I did a little bit of sport too. But yeah, it was nice. Twas good. I guess we can jump into the book. Over the past 2 weeks, we have been continuing with Climbing Free. We have done read chapters 4 through 6. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna chat about it. I think Lynn gets into a lot more of her. Just she gets into a lot. She gets into a lot. So
This is like the climbing set. This is
Mhm.
okay. I am now fully immersed in this sport. I feel like the first few chapters were just like the introduction to climbing and just kind of feeling
Personal
things out.
background.
Yeah, now this is like this was kind of my path to really being in this thing.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, chapter 4 was called Joshua Tree. And in this chapter, Lynn really discusses her formative years climbing in Joshua Tree, California. So she meets some of the leaders of the climbing scene at the time, people who you might recognize as icons and pioneers of the sport of climbing. I think a lot of these names came up in Valley Uprising, which I've only seen once, but having like reading this book is making me want to like read it again, especially when I'll talk about this some in the later chapters, but kind of when she gets into like she sort of hints at some of the drama that kind of went on in Yosemite and in the climbing scene around this time, and it was tea. Like it was wild. So yeah, I don't know, that might be kind of
I still gotta watch that, but I kind of want to wait until the book is over. I don't want to
yeah,
read it. I don't want to watch it until I
yeah,
know her perspective.
totally, yeah. And I feel like it'd be fun to like maybe even do like a little bonus episode or something and watch the movie and have like a conversation about it. But yeah, we can see.
Yes.
But yeah, so names like John Bakar, John Long, John Yablonsky, Dean Fiddleman. Some of these names I recognize. I think John Long was one that came up a bunch. A lot of Johns. But yeah, at the time, these were like some of the legends of the climbing industry. And she starts to get into how these years shaped her evolution as a climber and really grew her confidence and her skills on the rock. Her first few times in Joshua Tree, she and her climbing mentor at the time, Chuck Bludworth, were sort of seen as outcasts. I think that scene was just very exclusive, and you kind of had to sort of earn your I don't know, like you had to sort of earn your right to be in that club and like be seen as somebody to join their little club. But I think that after kind of demonstrating bravery on a particular route and really taking a big fall, Lynn sort of got accepted into the fold of this group. She called them the hotties. I don't know if she actually called them this to her face. She didn't mention that, I don't think. But
Yeah.
they kind of had this like haughty,
Yeah.
maybe a
Haughty
little
toddy,
arrogant,
uppity.
yeah, attitude. But
We've all
eventually,
met them.
yeah, oh
We've all
yeah,
been to the crag and had our fair share of hotties.
yes, totally. They are still out there. But yeah, she gets adopted by them. She even gets her own little nickname. They called her Little Herc. Um, and she reminisces on some of the people who were just most influential to her relationship with the sport, and to her development during this years. And she kind of ends on the note where she talks about sort of naturally transitioning away from the crew that sort of initiated her into climbing. So her sister Kathy, her climbing mentor Chuck, who was also her sister Kathy's boyfriend at the time. And yeah, she starts to get into how she opts for this new climbing family where she feels a lot more acceptance and a lot more belonging. And it sounds like she's kind of found her home within climbing. Um, so yeah, I mean, one thing that I thought was fun and interesting was I was just kind of curious, like if you had a climbing nickname, what do you think it would be?
It's so funny. So, I saw the nicknames, and I think the weird thing about nicknames is usually they're created for you by someone else based on how they, I guess, see you.
Mhm.
So I have to sort of take myself out of it and think of
Mm,
like I'm on the wall, what do people who watch me climb would think about my style of climbing?
Hmm.
And I don't know. All I could think about was like Powerpuff Girl. I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm very, I like to, I was very much like, let me use my natural strength, especially in the beginning of climbing. Because you know how Lynn was a gymnast and just kind of was naturally skilled.
Hmm.
I was always just naturally athletic,
Hmm.
but I didn't have any of the, I didn't understand the mechanics of climbing, the technique, or anything like that. So I was just, I don't know. I feel like I would just always be powering up things and then get
Hmm.
super fatigued because I had no technique. Um,
Hmm.
and again, I'm thinking of if somebody else was watching me climb, but I could not come up with a good nickname. And this is from somebody who was a DJ, and I have many DJ names.
Really?
I
Oh, you did tell me about some of those. That's
Yeah,
fun.
maybe my DJ nickname Odyssey. That kind of makes sense for me because I am always trying to go all over the world to climb. So,
Ooh,
yeah,
I like
maybe
that.
Odyssey.
Ooh,
And it actually is a nod to books. So, if you
yeah.
ever read the Odyssey, so yeah.
Cool. Wow, that's fun. That's a good one. I appreciate how much thought you put into this.
To be honest, that was on the fly. I did not. I was trying to think for like 2 days, and I
Yeah,
was like, I don't know. What
I
would
know,
somebody say?
right?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have a nickname? I feel like somebody probably would have given you one by now because you be
Okay.
out.
Well, I do actually. That's funny.
See.
I literally didn't think about this until just now, but I do have a climbing partner who calls me Fancy Feet.
Mm.
I don't know. She might be gassing me up, honestly, but she says that I have like fancy footwork. It's not fancy, but I do try. I did for a while, like especially when I started climbing, I put a lot of intention into trying to train my footwork and like would do a lot of drills and that sort of thing. And I think it has paid off. Um, so yeah, maybe Fancy Feet is my nickname. That was easy.
All right,
It's gonna
Fancy Feet and Odyssey. That's what it's about. Yeah, I don't know. It's so. It's just interesting reading this chapter and thinking about the culture of climbing. And I
Mm,
always hear that word culture in front of climbing. And, when I think about culture, I think of other
the
cultural
culture,
things.
doing it for the culture.
Yeah, because I'm like, what does that even mean? And this chapter to me was like the epitome of the culture of climbing in this moment in time.
Hmm.
And I think the nickname thing is because, especially if we're talking about J Tree, now I've been to Joshua Tree once. I think we established that last time.
Hmm.
I have been to
National park.
a national park. But it's hard. And
I know.
so, I when I read this chapter, I was like, "Oh, okay, Lynn gets into the cool kids club cuz I feel like it probably was super exclusive and low key exclusionary. Like, if you wasn't climbing hard and didn't have that potential that she naturally had, you ain't get no nickname. Like, we ain't
Mm-mm.
get you don't earn no nicknames. Like, you got to be out here doing it to get a
Yeah.
nickname. Like, if I walked up in the Joshua Tree, John Long would
Like,
not
whose
be.
man's is this?
Yes. Like, can somebody get this Ricky out of here? Why is
Same,
she out here?
honestly.
She got
Yeah.
like 4 crash pads. Like, come on, don't she know we solo out here? We
Right. Yeah.
soloing. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's true. I agree. I think that I would not be accepted into the fold. It's crazy because I'm supposed to be climbing in Joshua Tree in October, and I am shook trying to do everything I can to compensate for my lack of confidence. But
No,
but
you'll be
yeah.
fine. You'll be fine. I mean, you're gonna be. I don't know the ropes. I just know the bouldering out there.
Mm,
But I just feel like the, and this is just kind of going back to the culture.
mhm,
That whole try hard, climb hard culture of the 70s, whether they would have given me a nickname or not, I don't know how much I could have embraced that mentality.
yeah.
Especially the whole soloing. And I know one of the things I wrote down on my notes that stood out was like they were talking about soloing routes. not boulder problems, routes like
Yeah.
soloing 512.
511s and yeah,
Yeah.
like yeah. Yeah.
And it's like I deeply love climbing. I do. And it does resonate with me how deeply Lynn loves climbing and fell in love with climbing in this moment.
Hmm.
And again, it almost feels like maybe you had to be there cuz I just don't feel like, and I'm taking everything off the table. Injuries I've had, fear. I don't know that I could just get so into something where it's like you have to be willing to risk your life. That's how
Yeah.
much you love this thing that you know your life is on the line, and that's a no for me. Like I don't
Yeah.
I am adventurous. Don't get it twisted. I like adventure. I'm very risk welcoming, but there's a difference in my opinion, and those listening, you can comment and let us know. I think there's a difference between risk and just absolute like
Recklessness.
yes, there you go. That's the word.
Yeah.
I can't in my mind if I know that the one mistake I make may result in death. No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
life is short enough. Like I'm wearing all
Right.
black for those who can't see. I went to a funeral today, and it is all it all and for a funeral for somebody who died way too short, like half my age. And I'm just trying to figure out if I value climbing hard so much that it's climb hard or go home. And I'm going home. I'm going
Hmm.
home.
Hmm.
I'm going
Yeah.
home. I'm not climbing till the wheels fall off. Like I think it's
Right.
fun. I don't actually hate the scary parts, like when your stomach is, even though I hate roller coasters, which is weird, but
Yeah, me too.
um I don't know. I just don't think that I could have been sitting in Joshua Tree with the cool kids, especially. And I think this was that chapter. I could be wrong, but especially that one guy who like went up there and fell and almost had like a ground fall.
Was
And
it
his
was his
dad,
friend Tobin? Oh yeah, and his dad, yeah.
yeah, and his dad was like, "No, we'll get him next time." And I'm like, "No, we not."
Right? My parents
What?
would never.
I was
Oh,
just like that is wild to me. Like to
yeah.
face death knowing you are not attached to a rope, or
Yeah.
even if you are attached to a rope. I don't know. That I just could not.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that like it in my opinion it was reckless. There was just so much free soloing. Just so much. And yeah, like you said, like 5'10s, 5'11s, 5'12s. She talks about how I think it was John Long and maybe John Bakar, but it was two of the climbers that she climbed with, that were really big in that scene. And they would kind of challenge each other by going back and forth, like, okay, I'm gonna do a 5'9", you do a five, and just do this
Yeah.
all day. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, one
Soloing.
mistake could be
Soloing.
fatal. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. And it's impressive, but it also just feels like, what is, I can't say that I can relate to it or really understand the point. There's almost like this like attitude of like mocking death or like daring death. I mean, she even mentions like
Mhm.
literally one of the guys that was big in that scene. I think he wore a noose around his neck while he was climbing one of the routes or something like that. And if I remember correctly, it was the same person who like decades later ended up dying through a mountaineering accident. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I don't know. There is kind of just like this, it's like you're playing chicken with death almost. And you're just like, I don't know. I wonder if there is like a little bit of, like, I feel like I can conceptualize what that might feel like. There is just like that adrenaline high of like, playing this game with death, knowing that like one day you will probably lose.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wild. I think what was I watching? I was watching something maybe with Alex Honnold. It was Alex Honnold and maybe Tommy Caldwell who did. maybe I'm not sure actually. I could be making this up. This could be wrong. But it was a Patagonia film about two climbers, and one person mentioned that like these kinds of risks, and I don't even think they were soloing the route, but one person mentions that like these kinds of risks are like a bank account, and you get so many deposits, and you get so many like opportunities to like play this game before it just doesn't work
Yeah.
out in your favor. So yeah, I agree. I think it's really wild, and it feels like, I can't say exactly where it comes from, but it feels like there is this kind of like, I associate it with like a very masculine. Like I know that there were women who like
Like two
probably
or
fell
three, but
into this. Yeah. Because I think even Lynn Hill did some free soloing herself.
oh
But
yeah.
but like, I also think that just in general she approached climbing with a lot more humility. Um and yeah, it feels like there is like this very masculine sort of like display of dominance that sort of dominates, I guess, or guides like the attitudes around the sport. And like, I just feel like, what is free soloing if it's not like a hyper masculine like display of dominance? And I think we were talking about this last week of just like, you can't win against Mother Nature. Like,
Yeah. I mean, yes, there's some situations that are unpredictable, which is the
yeah.
nature of climbing. Like that part I do get. I get the inert risk that come with climbing. I do know there's some things that are completely beyond your control,
Mm-hmm.
but choosing not to put a rope on is just something I could never resonate with.
Mm-hmm.
I do understand that again. It feels to me that this was a time when people loved to be idolized and loved to idolize. Like,
Mm,
even the way she writes about this whole sort of like entrance into the cool kids, like, it really did to me feel like, I'm just gonna vision this out for you all. This feels like you're in a lunchroom and, you're sitting at the table with all the kids who brought their lunch that their mom made.
mm,
And you look over at the other table with the kids who came to school late and they brought McDonald's. And one of those kids looks over and says, "Hey, you want to come? You want to fry?" And you run over and you're like, "Oh my goodness, this is the most amazing thing." Like, she didn't obviously get into it and be like, "That was crazy. They were soloing. It was so scary." She was in awe of it. And that's
hmm.
why I think the culture is or was different. Maybe I do think there's still a small culture out there, but I think obviously the movement to make climbing more inclusive and people, you know, creating newer routes that aren't so hard. I think
Hmm.
the culture has shifted, and
Yeah.
obviously now, and here's the thing: I'm not shading soloing. I'm not saying that soloing is the devil and no one should do it. It's your life.
Yeah.
Live your whole life. I don't judge anybody. Do what you want to do. As long as it doesn't cause me any danger or
Hmm.
ideally trauma, because I do not
Hmm.
want to witness a fall.
Yeah.
Um, I think you do what you want to do. But I struggle with, could my first introduction to climbing have been watching people solo without a rope and be like, yeah, this is it for me. Like, yeah, I want to do that. I might have been like, whoa, y'all. Or I don't think I'll be honest with you. I don't even think I could have sat there and watched. I probably would have been like, after 5 feet, I'm like, oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. 10
Right.
feet up. Oh, wow, you doing that. 15, go ahead, get it. 20, I'm going home.
Yeah.
I'm 20, 25, 30. I'm like, wait, where's the rope? Like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, look, I'm okay with some broken ankle who's in the leg.
That's traumatic to watch. Like,
It
ugh.
is. It definitely is.
Yeah. Or experience.
So,
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. I think one of the other major themes that kind of really stood out to me in this book, on the other hand, was like amid all of this craziness and like I don't know, to me it feels a little reckless. And I think I'm with you. Like I don't judge anybody. It's, I think, your life, you take the risk that you want to. I don't understand it, and it's not something I'm comfortable with personally. Um, but amid all of that, another thing that she really talks about is community in climbing. And I think that she kind of talks about like finding her people essentially in Joshua Tree. Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess there's two things, right? So there's like one thing was she talks about how there were just like so people from so many different backgrounds, like people who, were living on the outskirts of the law to people who were like, stand up citizens, doctors, lawyers, scientists, like yeah. So I think it's just interesting to me that climbing was and kind of continues to be this common ground that brings people of diverse backgrounds together. And I think that that's true for climbing, but I think that just talking about it now, I feel like that's like broadly true for nature and like,
Yeah.
adventure in the outdoors. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I thought that that was interesting. And then the other thing that I think she focuses on is just like, yeah, finding your people in climbing, community in climbing. I think that climbing can be a very individual sport. Like it really is. Like I do think that you are like your biggest blocker, your biggest competition, but also like your biggest sort of like it's like there's just this whole journey and this whole very deep, intimate, personal relationship that you can develop with yourself through climbing. But just, you know, even beyond like I think even beyond like this kind of broader concept of community, like we literally need other people to climb with. We need belayers, we need spotters. So just in that way, climbing is kind of like inherently this community sport. But then kind of beyond the necessity aspect of it, I think that having community, it really just enriches the experience. Like I think our peers can be a huge source of inspiration for us, a huge source of encouragement for us. We learn a lot from each other, and I think that we can really bond through struggle and triumph. And I think that one of the really nice things about climbing is that a lot of times, at least in my experience, when you win, your partner sees it as a win also, or like when your partner
Mhm.
wins, you see it as a win. Like I feel like, you're like cheering your partner on. Like it's a really real thing. Like you, even people that you don't know, like you could be in the gym and like see a complete stranger and they're like about to send a route and you're just like stoked for them. You're like almost feel like you're having that experience with them. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's a
That's one of the things I
partnership.
love. Yeah.
It's
About the
definitely a
sport.
partnership. I 100% I agree.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have fall. I really, to be honest, I actually didn't fall in love with climbing until I found community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what really propelled Lynn into the next, the rest of the book,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, you
Totally.
know, because the people who introduced her to climbing, no shade, they weren't climbers. They were people who went climbing. And then
Mm-hmm.
she met actual climbers. And
Mm-hmm.
that, to me, is probably what changed her life. And I
Yeah.
think I could say the same for me. Like, I actually hated bouldering. I
Mm.
just felt trapped because I got a membership before I ever actually saw the gym. I was
Hmm.
like, I thought it was a rope gym and it was a bouldering gym. And I'm like, what is bouldering? I had only ever climbed outside on ropes. I didn't know bouldering was even a thing when
Hmm.
I came back from Colorado. So I was just like baffled. And I did it. Like I said, I had this like get in early with the gym. So I had this cheap discounted membership. And for Manhattan, cheap ain't cheap. So
Yeah.
I didn't really want to give it up. And I kept it and I did it and I canceled a couple times. Then I went
Hmm.
back and said no, uncancel it. And then I went to a climbing festival and I met people and I felt like I found community, and it did. It changed the game. So I totally
Nice.
get. I get you. I get you, Lynn. I get you.
Yeah.
When you find your people, it doesn't become the same again.
Yeah,
So
it
I get it.
totally changed the experience. Cool. Okay. Well, shall we move on to chapter 5?
Hmm.
White Wind. Cool. Chapter
Yeah,
5.
this chapter was.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. So yeah, let's get into it. So in White Wind, Lynn tells us the tragic story of the death of her friend and her first climbing mentor, Chuck Bludworth, in 1980. So as I mentioned, he was her sister's high school sweetheart, and he introduced Lynn to climbing when she was in high school. Though their paths diverged at some point, Lynn kind of like continued to pursue rock climbing. Chuck followed the path of mountaineering. They maintained a like I think a lot of connection and a lot of respect for one another. Um, so just to kind of quickly summarize the story, he, as I mentioned, he was really interested in mountaineering. At the time in 1980, he was a relatively inexperienced mountaineer when he accepted an invitation to join two climbers on an expedition to summit this mountain called goodness gracious, Aconcagua. I
Oh yeah,
should.
I could not pronounce. I could Akogagwa. I can't pronounce it either. But I think that was a very good attempt.
Thank
Kuda,
you.
like gold star on the attempt.
Thank you.
I just say Argentina. They were in Argentina.
Exactly. They were in Argentina. It's the tallest peak in South America at 22,000 feet. And so they chose to do an ambitious route. It was the south face of the mountain. I think most people who did the route would approach it on the north face, or who climbed the mountain would approach the route via the north face. Um, and so the South Face was a particularly difficult route. In the approximately 25 years since the first summit, only 6 groups had successfully reached the summit going up this route via the South Face. Everyone who climbed to the summit via the South Face, climbed the mountain in expedition style. So basically, that is where the groups will kind of like repeatedly ascend and descend the mountain, making progress each time, and securing the route with ropes, with tents, with protection, with food, all of that stuff along the way. And it just makes it a little bit easier for them to, reach the top and also to bail if they need to. So Chuck's group decided to do the South Face. They decided they did not want to do the expedition style summit, and they wanted to attempt the summit in one push. So traveling light with only what they could carry in their packs.
Yeah, I
Around the
think like 11 days worth of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't even, and I don't know. I didn't even read like how much water or anything they carried. I don't know if they had to ration anything, but they even decided not to use tents, it sounded like. So they would just
Oh my
kind of
goodness.
sleep
To
in their.
not only not use it, to not bring a
Right.
tent.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think they slept in their sleeping bags. Um, and around the fourth or fifth day, the group kind of seems to start struggling. Chuck, in particular, it seems like he's just really going through it and having like, I don't know. I don't know if it was the altitude or just really realizing the difficulty of what they had endeavored to do, but I think that he really kind of starts to struggle. um, Lynn mentions this really powerful wind force called El Blanco Viejo, or the white wind. This wind is known as, it's a notorious wind, it's known as El Blanco Viejo, and it is a super powerful wind force that can blow at its speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour, she said. So it can literally pin climbers to the mountain and restrict movement. But at that altitude, it can also create temperatures that can like freeze your flesh on impact and cause hypothermia. So incredibly dangerous. And Lynn mentions that this is the main thing that tends to kill people who attempt to climb this mountain. So
Yeah,
around the
and
fourth or
it's unpredictable, right? Like there's no forecast you can look up and be like, "Yo, when El Blanco coming through?" It's just
right.
it when it hits, and you better just hope it doesn't hit.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I don't know if there's a season that is particularly bad, but I feel like at that altitude, like the weather is just it's just weathering. It's just doing what it does, and right, like it
Yeah,
becomes incredibly
Mother
predictable.
Nature go nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like by the fourth or fifth day, they're having a hard time. The wind starts to like come in, and it starts to create issues for them. Um, they continue to progress, but they are in increasingly bad shape. And then when they get about 300 feet from the summit, I think they did not seem to realize how close they are. But I know that the night before they reached the summit, the wind came through and it made it really hard for them to progress. So they decided to kind of keep going in the morning. When they're about 300 feet from the summit, they split up. The leader of the group, Connor, seems to be in much better shape, so he decides to continue ahead of them to forge a path, and then he tells them that he's going to wait for them at the summit. He checks in with them before he takes off and tells him that he will meet them at the summit. Within about an hour, he finally gets to the summit, but Chuck and his partner named Guy never make it. And their bodies have still not been recovered. And this was in 1980. So, yeah, rest in peace, Chuck. Rest in peace, Guy. Really terrible story, but yeah, there's a lot there. There's
Yeah,
a lot
and
there.
none of that documentation was even through Chuck's perspective. It was all Connor
Mm,
who kept this journal and this record of this entire experience.
yeah.
And that's really, and I believe it mentions that Lynn was able to speak to Connor about the experience, because I'm sure, like, when you do these things, everybody wants to know what happens. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, I think it helps with closure, and it's even worse when there's no body.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you don't really know how to let go when there's not a body.
Yeah.
Now, I've never had an interest or an inkling of inquiry into mountaineering. I didn't know much
Mm-hmm.
about it. I thought the whole thing, it was kind of interesting to see that parallel of like rock climbing and mountaineering. And I do know that that is a direction that people who hike, climb, kind of a natural transition into the sport. Some people get into it. I know I'm very snow averse, so I have zero interest in doing snow things. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just,
Same.
you know, I mean, snowboarding, I did it. And
Okay.
again, I did it. I did that. You know, I just
Okay,
sold it,
you
but
did that.
I did do it. I didn't
Humble
do it
brag.
great. Yeah, I definitely fell a lot, and you know, a lot. But I just, you know, I just never wanted to be cold, and you know, I just was. This was kind of like, it was almost like reading a horror story, which
Yeah.
I love. I love to be creeped out. Like I love, and so hearing this whole chapter, which it kind of threw me back a little bit, because I'm like, oh, this chapter is not even about Lynn. Like I didn't know when I saw White Wind what this was going to be about. And I think even you mentioning that, I think the impact of it was that this was her first partner. This is the person who introduced her to climbing. So there's this
Yeah.
forever bond, even though that they obviously
Mm-hmm.
went separate ways around the Joshua Tree days. But you don't forget the person who introduced you to climbing, or the person who has this like impact on you. So
Yeah.
it was just very chilling, even to not even, it was like you were still there with Chuck without being there. Like when they mentioned, and I actually had to Google it, when they mentioned that Chuck got snow blind, because
Mm.
again, I don't do snow like that to know what snow blindness was, and the book didn't explain.
Yeah.
But I know they said he was struggling with snow blindness, so I had to, you know, do my thing with the Googles.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm curious if any mountaineers or any snowboarders, skiers, snow sport lovers have ever experienced this. But it's basically a temporary eye condition known or caused by overexposure to UV rays, particularly those reflected off of snow and ice. And it's
Oh.
basically sunburn of the cornea. So it's like, you know, we get, and we do get sunburn, y'all. Don't be tripping.
Yeah.
You know, you get sunburned by the sun, but if, you know, and this is why you're supposed to actually wear sunglasses. Or I used to
Right.
bike. I did do some winter biking. That's about as cold tolerant as I could get.
He was like, I'm gonna
And
heat up
so
one way or the other.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna be hot in like 5-10 minutes. I'm good. But winter biking, you're supposed to wear like specialized glasses, especially if it is snowing, or
Mm.
you know, or if there was snow previously on the ground. And I
Mhm.
never, it wasn't, I think, to prevent snow blindness, but your eyes are sensitive to
Yeah,
bright light exposure. So it
that's
was,
true.
I don't know, it was just wild. And I think what's so sad about it is how close they were to the top, like how close
Yeah.
to the finish. Like I just wonder how much guilt Connor had,
Right.
because you can't not. I mean, obviously, Connor invited these two people. Like, this was his thing. And
Yeah.
then to be the only one who survives, like, I'd
Yeah.
have survivor's guilt. I have all the
Yeah.
guilts. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It was rough.
Yeah. It's rough. It is. Yeah. That sounds like so much. And I'm sure he did struggle with all of those things. Because, right,
Yeah.
like I wonder if he knew how close they were, would he have stayed with them? I also
Yeah.
wonder would how much of a difference would that have made? Like I don't yeah, I have so many questions. Like it's like
Yeah.
when
I mean, it
something
could
like
have,
that
it could have affected him. He could have ended
yeah.
up being with them. Like, you don't, yeah, you don't
Yeah.
know. You
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
true. And I wonder if it's the kind of thing where like they were struggling but they just needed somebody. Cuz I also wonder how they died. Like I know that he mentioned like exactly how they died. Like I know that he mentioned at telling them not to remove their shoes or else their feet would swell up. Um,
Didn't
and
they
I don't,
find evidence, though, of the shoes being
right,
off?
right.
Yeah.
I do
Hmm.
remember that them saying that they found a pair of shoes, or maybe it was a single shoe, but I do remember them saying that they found some of their gear and that a shoe was one of those things. And so I'm curious like what actually killed them because I wonder if like it was the kind of thing where maybe Chuck Connor could have like if he was just with them and like had kept them from like taking off their shoes or whatever, like if there was something that he could have done to protect them, or kind of like you said, like if he would have ended up also being um a victim. um yeah, I don't
I mean,
know. A
I
casualty.
think to be honest, he was kind of carrying them the whole way,
Yeah.
and he was trying. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think there comes a point where that survival instinct kicks in. Like, we don't
Hmm.
know what was in Connor's brain, and I'm not even gonna like try to assume,
Hmm.
but I do feel like there's a certain point because he was struggling with food,
Hmm.
being able to sustain himself. There's a certain point where it's like survival of the fittest. Like, you just have to get out there. I mean, I even jotted down a quote where it said that they were too concerned with survival to even appreciate them. Like, they couldn't, you do all this
Hmm.
for the adventure,
Hmm.
for the nature, the beauty. Like, you are now seeing this beautiful peak, this landscape, and
And you
now
can't
you are
even
so
appreciate it.
delirious. Yeah, you're deliriously cold, fatigued. Your fingers and toes are probably donezo.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know. It kind of just
Yeah.
takes me back to chapter 4. It's like,
Yeah.
is that is that level of climbing hard really fun?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
what Connor's path where it took him after that, if he, because a lot of times people go through these things and they still do it. I mean, it's addictive. It's
Hmm.
even having a near death experience. I mean, there's people who are like, look at me, like, why do you still climb? But
Yeah.
I can see him still going back out there despite everything that happened
Yeah.
and the risk involved. But man, I don't know. Just
Yeah.
so many cringy, like, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm trying to like be, sensitive to the fact that obviously this was tragic. Like this was terrible. And it really sucks. I especially feel for Chuck and Guy, but especially Chuck because I don't Lynn doesn't go super deep into his mountaineering experience, but he didn't really know these people. Like Guy and Connor knew each other better than Chuck knew either of them. I think he maybe knew them tangentially, but that was like their first real experience, like climbing and being out together. Um,
Hmm.
and it sounded like he was relatively inexperienced with mountaineering, but was just really admired the sport and was really interested in it. And so I don't know, it kind of just I really feel for him because it's like for him it probably sounds like this is this amazing opportunity to like do the thing that I've always wanted to do in the most extreme way and to have an opportunity to be the first, like they would have been the first Americans to summit the mountain
Hmm.
via this route. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a bummer because I think that maybe the excitement and the allure of like getting to do this sort of like clouded good judgment. because I think that like they were just like, I don't know, just from the way that she sort of sets up the story, it's like there were some questionable choices that they made. And I think that ultimately it sounds like Connor is maybe responsible for a lot of like the planning that happened. But yeah, it's just, it's super unfortunate. And like you said, it does kind of call back to that, the chapter 4, of just like this sort of hyper competitiveness and this almost glorification of danger that I feel like comes comes with a lot of like extreme adventure sports in general, and especially something like mountaineering, where there's just like this sense that if you're not putting yourself in like life or death danger, you are not legit, or you haven't sort of earned a certain degree of respect. And I just wonder, like, I know that they wanted to be the first Americans to summit via this route, and it's like, why couldn't, why wasn't that enough? Why did it have to be like, we're going to be the first to summit this route, and we're going to be the first to do it without a tent, and we're going to do it this, and it's like, I think that like that would have been a cool thing to aspire to, but I think that just like having some experience, it's like, I don't know, I just keep getting, it keeps bringing up the question of like at what cost. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I agree with you in that, I love climbing, but it's not something, and I recognize that it is an inherently dangerous sport, but to the extent that I can like mitigate risks, I am going to do that because I want to keep climbing. Like I want to do it for
Yeah.
as long as I can. Um, but then it also kind of like, I think, and maybe something you said sort of called this to mind too, but it also kind of makes me, I don't know, want to play devil's advocate a little bit, because I think kind of like you said, there is this like aspect of addiction and this aspect of like, I don't know. I feel like I can wrap my mind around the idea, and even though I can't personally relate to feeling this sort of like craving for adventure in this way, um, I think I can understand the allure of it. And I just wonder, like, I guess just to play devil's advocate, like, is mountaineering, is it like a passion worth dying for? Like, is there some virtue or nobility in this more like pure style of adventure? I don't know, like, does it actually deepen your relationship with nature, or is it like I am just like conquering nature, and does it kind of like feed that sort of like, I don't know, that sort of arrogance, or that sort of like uh bucking
Yeah,
against
I
death?
cannot answer a single one of those questions, but any mountaineers out there want to get in on the conversation, I would love to
Yeah,
hear, especially mountaineers who probably started as climbers, because I do think there's a direct connection. I do think
totally.
people transition gradually. You start with hiking, then you scramble, then you rock
Hmm.
climb, then you mountaineer. Like I do think, or you backpack. Like I do think there's this like one up. Let's keep pushing the limits of what we can do with our bodies, what we can do with nature. And I also agree. I do think Connor thought he was planning efficiently. I think he was being strategic.
So cool. Let's dive into chapter 6, Yosemite Days. So in Yosemite Days, Lynn discusses some of her experiences in climbing in Yosemite Valley. As you may know, Yosemite is arguably one of the most influential kind of climbing sites or destinations in American climbing history. I would say that it's this location where the sport was more or less established. If you've seen the film Valley Uprising, I mentioned this a couple of times, but that's kind of like the setting or the backdrop for a lot of what goes on in that film. And so Lynn, during this chapter, she expresses or explains the evolution of the sport, primarily from aid climbing to free climbing. She discusses how the gear and the equipment available at the time really helped define the prevailing attitudes around climbing. She talks about pitons being the main form of protection, and how they needed to be hammered into the rock with one hand, which I still cannot really wrap my mind around. Um,
Have you ever seen a piton, like an OG piton stuck
yeah,
in a rock? Yeah, that's wild. When I look at that,
uh-huh.
I'm like, y'all were wilding.
I know they have some in the Sandia Mountains, which is like the mountain range very close to Albuquerque, and I had to, I definitely clipped into one as protection on a on a
Wow.
route. But yeah, so yeah, she talks about just like the risk associated with placing these pieces of gear that really helped kind of shape the bold attitude expected of climbers at the time and the rules that sort of define the culture of climbing. And she highlights two rules in particular. The first being that at the start, all climbs must be started on the ground and be led from top to bottom. So if you were to rappel a route and like kind of scope it out or place protection on your way down and then climb it from the bottom to the top, that's cheating. You have to start from the bottom and go to the top, and you have to kind of finish it in one push. And then the other is that, yeah, if you fall or you take on a route, you fail. So you have to go back to the bottom, even if you're like inches from the anchor. You have to go all the way
You
back to
have
the
to
bottom
climb
and
it
start
clean,
over.
basically.
Yeah. Um, so over time, the equipment evolved, and I think the attitude and the culture of the sport evolved. I think that some of that, honestly, some of that attitude still lingers, but I think for the most part, it is definitely shifting. It's not nearly probably as intense as it was back then. But it wasn't without some pushback. So she kind of hints at some of the tea that happened in Yosemite around this time. But I think they go really in depth with it in Valley Uprising. So I do think it'd be fun to watch that film. But yeah, the chapter ends with Lynn recalling a story of the first time that she climbed the nose, which is a 31 pitch climb on El Capitan. I think she and her partners finished it over 4 days. She partnered with two other climbers, Mary Gingery and Dean Fiddleman. And over the course of 4 days, she and her partners overcame many obstacles, learned a lot of lessons. One of the big things they struggled with was Dean grappled with what seems like a newly discovered intense fear of heights. So he was really going through it.
I think he was afraid of heights. I just don't think he was quite prepared for that level of exposure. Like
Yeah,
I think
that's a
there's a
good way of putting
difference
it.
between feeling exposed and because I am not afraid of heights, but I have been on the side of some mountains where I was just like, this feels like a lot. Like
Yeah.
I felt Dean in every inch of my body. Like I felt for him so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, he was going through it. And I think that's a good way of putting it. Like just the exposure. She talks about going through this. I think it was like a traverse that you have to do on this feature called the Great Roof. And I was having a hard time kind of visualizing some of what she was describing, but it sounded like at least at a certain point, Dean would have had to take a really big swing kind of in midair. And that really frightened him and terrified him. They forgot to pack a headlamp. So there's one part of the climb where Lynn has to finish the pitch basically in complete darkness. And she only has Dean's cigarette to kind of like
Cigarette
occasionally
lighter,
illuminate
yeah.
the a cigarette lighter. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. She only has a cigarette lighter to occasionally illuminate the route in front of her, which is just, I am just like, what?
Yeah, I'm not gonna
But
lie, that was badass. Like the fact that
yeah,
she climbed, she that is the epitome of night climbing. Like I don't care what nobody says, she
literally.
did that. Like that is some
Yeah.
OG straight up. Like if I gotta flick the bic, clip clip,
Yeah.
clip the bic, like she, that was
Yeah.
so wild to me.
And I wonder, yeah, I should go back because I wonder, like, with that pitch, like, was she using also hammering in pitons as she was going, or were there bolts at that point, or like, because if she was also hammering pitons in at night with a lighter as her only form of light, like, I can't even, yeah, crazy badass. I think yeah, she's an icon. She's a legend. She's a star. But on the fourth morning, she accidentally drops the food bag 2,000 feet to the base of the climb.
And
So she's a human
and
also.
it wasn't so much that she dropped it. So you're supposed
She,
to attach everything to the mountain, but I think in their haste of just trying to get there, get to sleep, they didn't think it was one of those things, and it kind of goes back to the first chapter of like her forgetting to tie in. Like
mm-hmm,
sometimes you can make really small mistakes. It can have big consequences. I mean, fortunately, this one
mm-hmm.
didn't have a big consequence, but
If that happened on
it
the
could have
first day,
been.
they would have been in trouble.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, they probably would have
Yeah,
bailed, but you have
yeah,
to clip everything into like that main belay station or wherever they rigged their gear, and it didn't happen. So,
Yeah.
and that's and
So
that
she,
that is exactly why you do it, because you can wake up and
right.
kick something off the side of the mountain.
Right. So yeah, the food bag was not secure and she kicked it and she was like, "Oops." But Dean was able to kind of break the tension with some comedic relief. And fortunately, they were, I think, just a few pitches from the summit. That was their last day, so they just kind of powered through and made it to the top. But yeah, all of the struggles that they experienced, I'm sure it brought them closer. It undoubtedly taught them a lot of lessons, and these insights would set Lynn up for success on her many subsequent ascents in the years that followed. So I don't know how many times she's done it at this point, but she mentions that within a certain time period, she completed the nose about 7 times, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
following that. So,
seven more times.
so yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think I'm curious what your thoughts were on this chapter. Yeah.
Now, I can definitively say I've never been to Yosemite. I've seen pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the
Yosemite.
chapter, yeah, the chapter was so fascinating to me because I think obviously Yosemite didn't start out being a climbing destination, hence why towards the beginning of the
Mm,
chapter they were like El Cap was originally banned because people would be like looking at these climbers on the side of the mountain and causing like traffic jams and I'm
mhm,
sure probably even accidents. And you know, I like I said, I love to be high. I said that last time. I don't want to be that high. I don't. I actually I love multi pitch. I love to be high. I think I'm a three and out kind of pitch girl.
okay.
Maybe I would get to five, but that is
Mhm,
100% as high as I think I could ever see myself going. Um,
mhm,
I This was my favorite chapter of this
hmm,
section of chapters,
mhm,
and I think it was just the whole story, and it's just so true to climbing. It is unpredictable. Things can and
mhm,
will go wrong. How do you overcome those challenges?
mhm,
And this is probably the chapter that made me be like, I F's with her. Like she
hmm,
not just a badass, and obviously, like we knew she's strong. That was clearly recognized by the hotties. Like we know she can do this, but it was like the fact that she could get Dean to finish this, because not everybody
mhm.
could have. Some people would have been like, I can't handle, because it's a lot to climb with somebody who's clearly afraid.
I'm
It
really going
takes a
through it.
it
Yeah.
takes a very strong person to do a route with someone who is utterly terrified. Because personally, most of us don't climb to babysit people. I mean, unless we're
Mhm,
specifically there introducing people to the sport, which we love to do
mhm,
as climbers.
mhm,
But
mhm.
mostly, like to do something like that, knowing the difficulty, I would have been like, let's go. I'm done.
Yeah.
This isn't even
Because
fun. And he's
yeah,
clearly terrified. It's not like he
yeah,
is utterly terrified. He's sitting here shouting, "Tell my girl I love her." Like
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
about to die on this pendulum
yeah.
swing, and
And she said that like he was like half joking, half serious, but I think he was also very
he
much
was
like,
fully
but
serious.
like
I
for
don't.
real.
His
Tell her.
personality made me jokey jokes. He was
Yeah.
fully serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I felt the fear
Yeah.
literally crawling off the page, and I wanted him to be on the ground so bad. I'm like, just get that man down. Get that man
Yeah.
down to the ground. It also felt
Yeah.
very like woman power ish. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Her and
Yeah.
Ginger being like, man up, Dean. Dean, you better
Yeah.
man up.
Seriously. I know. I'm like low key, like, Dean, these women are they're gonna flex. And like I know with climbing being like such a hyper, I feel like, especially at that time, a hyper masculine sport, like I wonder, how he felt coming down and having to admit that, like, yeah, they let most of the pitches. I was shook.
I want to know that too. I really do want to know. Like, what was Dean's
Yeah.
post reaction, and was that Dean's last like big wall climb? Dean, like,
Yeah.
yo, y'all got it. I'm good. Like, what happened to Dean?
Yeah.
That's
What
actually
happened to Dean?
not not to like fast forward, but I want to know. I'm hoping in these
Yeah.
upcoming chapters, because I am reading this real time, just so y'all know. I'm not like reading ahead and recapping my thoughts. I kind of want to
Right.
experience the book with y'all. If you're reading along with us, I want to like feel what you feel when you feel it. But I hope we hear about Dean again, because
Yeah. We need to
I'm
check on
curious.
Dean.
We need to check
Somebody go
Dean.
check on
We
Dean.
need to check Dean's pans. You know, we need to check his smoking habit, because it probably escalated after that. Like, this guy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's it is true though that like yeah, I thought that stood out to me a lot, kind of just like the attitude that Lynn had to maintain when climbing, because I agree that like right, like you don't climb like especially something like this where it's really ambitious. We kind of like all need to be together and we need to I mean, just in general, like a route like this, you kind of have to be calm, cool, collected. You have to try to have a positive and optimistic attitude because, like you said, you have to kind of be somewhat prepared for the unknown and you have to be prepared to suffer a little bit and to struggle a little bit. And it seems like, from what she shared with us, Lynn is kind of naturally gifted at keeping a relatively cool head. Um, but when you're like kind of taking care of someone who's struggling mentally on a climb, it's like you're not just, you already are managing your own mental state and your own kind of like being able to keep your composure while you're doing something that's risky. But then to have to manage somebody else's mental state is a lot. And there's also, I think, always that risk that like somebody could kill the vibe. Like Dean could have
Mm-hmm.
really easily like killed the vibe and messed up everybody's mental headspace and kind of like really made it difficult. But when you're in that situation where someone's struggling, I also think that there's kind of like a okay, like similar to like what Chuck and Guy and Connor went through. I'm sure that like there were times on that climb where Connor was also very terrified for his life, but he was like, somebody's got to keep it together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're kind of like put in that position where somebody has to kind of like keep it together and you kind of have to turn it on. And it's kind of like this instinct or this like, yeah, I feel like there's some element of survival instinct. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think too, it kind of brings to question, and this is always, it's not, I think it's more controversial for me just thinking about it,
Mm,
but this also kind of brings to question of experiencing new things with new people. You
mm,
know, I can't recall if this was her first like main big wall climb. At least if it wasn't, it seemed like it was her first with Dean. And
mm.
imagine like sport climbing with somebody you've only ever top roped with. You know, it's different. It's different. Like I need you to I may need you to lead. I'm going to lead. Like you going from one style of climbing to another style of climbing with somebody new, especially
Mhm.
if you're depending on them in some ways. I mean, obviously it was 3, which I think made it better, because if it was just 2 people and one person was leading all of those pitches,
Yeah.
there's no way. And so
We
luckily,
probably wouldn't have been cool after that.
and
Like,
but see, that's the question though. That's the thing.
yeah.
Like vetting your climbing partners. You know, I know people don't want
Yeah.
to talk about that and people don't want to blame people for when things go wrong. Like I don't blame my belayer for my injury. I
Hmm.
definitely take a lot of part in it, but I'm sure my belayer blames themselves. But there's a
Hmm.
lot of responsibility on both sides on who you decide to do this with. We've already
Yeah.
established over the course of this episode that climbing is dangerous. This sport is dangerous. And like when you're
Yeah.
risking your life, you have to really, in my opinion, know who you're climbing with. And you know, I probably would not have also ever climbed with Dean again. I mean,
Yeah.
because
Single pitch, we can hop on a single pitch.
exactly. Yeah, I won't say like
Yeah.
never climb with Dean again. Again, like Dean, you out the club. You ain't no cool kid no more. But I do think that there's just a level of like it's just sometimes you just don't know. Like, and you can trust a person, you can trust their abilities, but things happen and you just don't know.
Yeah.
But it is like when you find, I guess it's just like in life, when you find that partner who does it for you and they got you like it's like
Yeah.
golden. And it's the same with climbing partners. Like I right now, I don't feel like I actually have like a good consistent outdoor climbing partner. I trust maybe two people. Actually, I am not a maybe. There are two people who I 100% trust belaying me. And
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of gotten to the point of having to be more observant and see how other people climb with other people before I'll climb with them. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think there should be
It's
more
huge.
conversations about taking that responsibility, and there's
Absolutely.
nothing wrong with I tell people like I say, look, I'm sure you're a perfectly fine belayer and I respect your skills and this, that, and the third, but it's not happening. And that's happened in the gym. I've seen somebody
Mm-hmm.
who like couldn't belay in the gym and I was like, respectfully, I'm gonna sit this one out.
How'd that go? Like, how was their response to you?
Well, to be honest, they kind of failed the belay test. You know, gyms are
Oh,
weird. They like pseudo failed it, but then still gave them the ability to belay with monitoring or something. It was like a weird provisionary belay certification.
that's interesting.
And I was like, look, I've had some significant trauma. So it's like, this isn't personal against you, but like, I just have to really trust
Very
that the person,
selective.
yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to feel any kind of way if somebody is upset that I don't want them to belay me. Like, I'm not, it is my
Yeah,
life. I get one
for
of these.
sure.
I'm not a cat.
Yeah.
I get one whole life and I'm going to protect that.
Yeah.
I'm going to protect
Yeah.
it. So
Totally.
it's like, Dean,
Yeah.
you the homie, but it's a no for me. It's a no for me.
It's a no for me. Yeah.
And it would make me, as Lynn, if I were Lynn, it would make me
Hmm.
think a lot deeper before I did another big wall climb with somebody. I'd be like, yo, me and Gingery, we good, but
We locked in.
yeah. And I'm sure like
Yeah.
all the other people she saw like crushing it, she, had opportunities to climb with. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's just wild to me. And I mean, yeah, that could have, if she wasn't the person that she was, that could have ended up completely differently.
Yeah. 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 Another thing that really stood out to me was that climbing was a very DIY thing back in the day. Like we had people out here making protection out of, I mean, it's metal and like I'm
Oh,
sure,
yeah.
they knew what they were doing, but making pitons out of car scraps, out of old rusty metal, out of stove legs. I'm just like, this is
What
insane.
other sport? What other sport were people doing that? Like this, that
Yeah.
like you need to be up this mountain that bad. That
I
you
mean, thank y'all for doing that, I guess,
by
but
any means necessary. Like
it's crazy. Yeah.
that is
Oh, I'm gonna just go ahead and take these legs off my stove. I don't need those anymore. I'm gonna just, this
yeah,
car has just been sitting here. I'm gonna just take the the,
like
the fender off and
what you up there with the tape measure like this crack. Oh, this is a 22-inch crack. I got a 22-inch metal leg at home that I can and pop into that. Like I know they don't
yeah,
make a thing to stick in that. So let's make our own thing. Like there was no
yeah.
like the lack of regulation and to me
I know.
only during this time, and no offense, but only white men could they be like, yeah,
Yeah, right. It's true.
up
Yeah,
there. The park was like, I mean, but I do think when they
yeah.
saw that weird stove contraption thing, they were like, no, no, bro, stop, get down. Like, come
And
on.
I know that there was like a lot of tension between the climbers and the
The park,
park service,
yeah,
but the fact that there was tension at all, like the fact that they weren't clipped like on site, like it's like, no, you are not doing this, and the cops are here. So,
yeah. I mean,
like,
tension and just straight shut down is two different things. Like, we don't
right,
like it,
right,
but you're gonna do it, so we'll let you do
yeah,
it. I just think like me,
right,
let it be me and you up there, like, hey, hey, Mel, I got this stove. I got this old barbecue grill. I'm just gonna break that
right,
apart and we gonna make it work and get up there, girl. And then we excuse me, miss, excuse me. What are you doing with that?
yeah,
Like, go home.
right,
There's no way. There's no way. I don't know. That is,
yeah,
I mean, yeah. And I'm curious if there's somewhere that like actually documents the deaths that resulted from all
Mm,
of this makeshift gear. Because I even think about back few chapters ago when they were making seatbelt harnesses and body belaying and doing all this other stuff.
yeah.
Like, I know there's no like AAC reports, but I'm like, where are those those accident
Yeah.
journals about
Like,
these?
where are they
Because
logged?
there's no way. There is
Yeah,
just no way. I
I know.
I respect. I mean, look,
It's wild.
y'all definitely pushed the limits. You definitely got the sport where it is today, and I'm so thankful that the gear exists. But
Right, they
oof,
had to start somewhere,
it
I guess.
it's just wild to me because I just can't think of any other sport, and I'm sure I don't know how what people snowboarding with like random pieces
Yeah.
of wood. Like I don't know how other sports evolved, but the evolution of climbing is
Yeah.
just so fascinating, and
It's crazy.
yeah.
Did you know? I don't know if you knew this, but when trad climbing started, I might get this wrong a little bit, but I believe that like initially, like, or maybe not initially, like I know that there was pitons, and I don't know how that evolved into like trad climbing, but I think at one point, like people were literally tying knots to the end of rope and slotting the knot itself in cracks
Oh.
and using that as protection. And then I think at some point it evolved to like like the washers, like the nuts that you use to like build things,
Oh yeah, yeah,
like a
yeah.
screw nut.
Yep.
So at some point that was like the protection, and
Yeah.
you would like
Until they made
sling a
real
piece of
nuts.
rope into that, and that's I think where the term nut came from.
Mm.
um but yeah, it's crazy, like hanging off of like I got nuts in my little toolkit. I cannot imagine like just being like, let me just go up in here and grab like whatever I can find in my little tool bag and like hope that this works. But yeah, shout out to y'all. Thank you for pioneering. It couldn't have been me, but
I think it just
but
says a
I'm glad
lot
that I get
about
to reap.
I think it says a
Yeah.
lot about the sport. I just think
Yeah, totally.
climbing just has this visceral, natural, addictive quality that it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do this
Mm-hmm.
somehow, some way. It's wild. I don't know. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's so wild.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah. It's
know.
pretty crazy.
But that was a good
Yeah.
way for me ending this like set of chapters. I was just
Yeah.
like, I mean, because I could probably watch if somebody like had a drone cam, I could watch people, not solo.
Hmm.
I can watch people big wall climb all
Yeah.
day and find it super fascinating because it's so intricate and it's just the views, the vis like it's amazing. But I'm just curious, what happened to Dean? I just want to know. Are we
What
going? Are we?
happened
Are
to
we going? Are
Dean?
we going to find out what happened to
Are we gonna
Dean?
hear from Dean?
It
Yeah.
sounds like from the titles of the upcoming chapters that it's definitely going to be more climbing, which I'm looking for. I don't even know if they get into her competition days, but I really want
Hmm.
to. I'm hoping in the coming chapters we kind of can get a little bit more into her other styles of climbing and her international climbing, because this was definitely all about the classic US spots, but obviously Europe is like, to me, the origins of climbing and the home of climbing.
Hmm.
So I kind of can't wait to get into that. But
Yeah.
what should people be reading for the next episode? For the next
Yes. So the next episode, join us in reading chapters 7 through 9. Let's see, what are their titles? Big Wall Thrills. So we'll get into some more big wall climbing. We got to check on Dean. Is Dean going to be around? We don't know.
Dean's done. He's done.
um, he is
Dean's over
done.
at Dunkin'
Uh,
Donuts like, y'all have fun up there.
Adventures with Largo. So I think this one, there was a man named Largo was his nickname, but John Long I think is the man. um so she's going to talk about a lot of her climbing adventures with him. And then chapter 9 is from Vegas to Hollywood. So I
Mm,
didn't even know we were in Vegas. I don't know how we got there, but we're going to end up in Vegas and then we're going to get over to Hollywood.
okay.
So yeah, join us in reading chapters 7 through 9. We'll be back in 2 weeks. But in the meantime, please like, subscribe, share with all your homies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and join our book club. Visit our website,
Yeah.
linked in the show notes. Join our book club. We would love to hear some of y'all's stories and start to feature your stories, your big wall climbing stories, or your reactions.
Yes.
We want to get y'all involved. But yeah, definitely check us out. Follow us on
I want to
social.
hear from some mountaineers. I want to hear
Yeah,
like
I do
tell
too.
us what is it about mountaineering that like
that
pushes you to
draws you.
like go so hard. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I admire and I respect it, and I just want to know what does that feel like from
Yeah.
someone who actually experiences it.
And is
But yeah,
mountaineering always cold and snowy? Like, is there any way for it to not be cold? Because maybe I'll
yeah,
consider it then. Maybe.
right.
But otherwise, y'all got it. But no, this was
Yeah,
great. Yeah. Yeah, Mel, thank you for clocking in and getting in. And we appreciate y'all for watching.
yeah.
Yep.
See you later. See you next
See you
time.
next time. Bye. Books and Boulders, an adventure podcast produced by First Outdoor Company for climbers, readers, and everyone in between. Subscribe now and join the BB Book Club.